Hello and welcome everyone to today's cloud coaching session on introducing Select AI, a new way to talk to and converse with your Oracle Autonomous Database. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tara Van Cleve and I am a marketing event manager for the developer initiative here at Oracle. And today we're excited to show you how to enable this feature and how it can be effective at finding data in your applications and leveraging large language models. We'll also be recording the session, and you'll receive the recording via the same email that you registered with for today's event. If you have any questions during the webinar, please drop them in the Zoom chat and Zoom Q&A areas, and we'll be ready to help answer them. We've also set up a channel in our developer public Slack called Cloud Coaching North America that you can access at the QR code or at bit.ly/odevrel_Slack. We'll leave this channel open after the event to contact us directly with any questions and to share resources and upcoming events in the series. So today's webinar will be presented by Master Principal Cloud Architects Stephen Nichols and Derek Cameron. So without further ado, I will hand it off first to Stephen.
Great, thank you, Tara. Hello, my name is Steve Nichols, and today, along with Derek Cameron, we're going to walk through how to use Select AI in the Autonomous Database to access AI providers in the cloud. So our agenda is going to look like this. We're going to go through some overview slides first, and then I will walk through the specific configuration steps to set up your credentials, set up your AI profile, make sure everything's tied together. I'll then walk through some basic usage examples using the chat in SQL, run SQL actions. And then I'll turn it over to Derek. He'll take a more deeper dive into advanced usage of the Select AI. He'll go under the covers a little bit more and explain what changes the outcome and what you can do to have better results. Basically effects of different things in the features. And then lastly, we'll do a quick Code Innovate program overview and then go with questions and answers. Now, just one thing I want to say before I get started in the overview. All of this information that Derek and I are going to cover is already in a GitHub workshop format, Markdown. All this information's there. You can copy the commands out of there. We also reference documentation links throughout. So if you want to read more about the features of the packages and procedures, you can do so. I also want to call out that a lot of this content, or most of it's based off of the movie streams data, and also the workshop called Chat with Your Data in Autonomous Database. If you go to that Live Labs workshop, you can actually stand up the movie stream schema in Autonomous Database and do most of everything that we're doing today. So I just wanted to call that out before I start into the overview. So before I really dive in, I want to take a moment just to remind everyone that, when we're speaking AI, Oracle brings AI to all layers of the enterprise, not only at the application level, but AI services, the data platform, and infrastructure. And today we'll mainly be focusing on the data platform and also AI services. And just to remind everyone, the breadth of our AI and ML capabilities. We have AI-enabled capabilities in our Fusion, Cerner, and NetSuite applications. AI services, some of these have been around a while. We have an anomaly detection, speech and vision services, digital assistant, and then more recently, we've released the OCI GenAI service in relationship with Cohere. So that's available now in GA. You can access that in our Chicago region. From a data platform perspective, just a quick reminder, we have the Oracle database with machine learning, along with the data science platform. The area that we're going to focus on mainly today is the autonomous database and the Select AI features with that. And then lastly, just from a pure OCI perspective, we have cloud native, but more importantly, we have the NVIDIA GPUs and the AI infrastructure that's available for you to run your AI workloads. So why do we want to do this deep dive into Select AI today and Select AI? Well, we know that data is crucial. Being able to access that data is crucial. Being able to use that data to make business decisions is crucial. And we need an effective way to do that. And with the power of AI, we can do that. And hopefully after today's session, you'll see a better, simpler, easier way to get at your data and also enhance it with the Gen AI services that are available. So if you think of a traditional user today, they access an application or a dashboard. Those applications or dashboards are accessing data in your autonomous database. But now we have this feature called Select AI or AI. And those traditional interactions with the autonomous database are around tables, columns, knowing how to join the data, how to select the right columns, get the SQL right. With Select AI, we can simply ask the database a question like you would normally ask a question to another human. You can ask the question, we send it over to the autonomous database. The database is now integrated with Gen AI services. You'll see those services in a minute. Those services include OCI's Gen AI, which is coming out very soon, but also Cohere, OpenAI, and Azure OpenAI. So, with Select AI, we can now more simply and faster enable these features in our applications to get at our data and enhance our data much quicker than we have in the past. Here's some business use cases that may look familiar to you. I won't go into detail explaining them all, but you can see that we can use Gen AI across your whole breadth organization of sales, marketing, product development, and so forth. Here's an example of a use case that is very related to what we're doing today. And I just wanted to, we're not going to cover this use case, but I just wanted to give you an example. Our demo and content is based around movie streaming, getting at that information. Here's a simple use case where you have customer data on who your customers are, what they're watching. You can then take the Select AI feature, which is leveraging Gen AI, send it some information about your customers. You can ask it to write a more compelling email or customized email with the customized subject line, and then send that email out. So you can be very accurate and precise and compelling to your customers with some promotions or whatever. So I just wanted to call that out as a simple use case that is tied to our data today. And so if you think about, when we asked these questions in the past about movies, we're going to use the example is what is our total streams for each Tom Hanks movie this month? That's a question. If before Select AI was available in the database, you simply couldn't type that into a SQL developer or any query tool and get an answer back. But now you can. And think about what all goes into that question. From a total streams perspective, that's going to go out and count the number of rows in a table. You want to see that broken down by movies, so that's what the for each is. But you want to be specific, so you want that answer to be filtered based on the actor Tom Hanks. And by the way, I only want to see it for a specific month, so there's a time factor involved. So with the power of Select AI, with large language models, we can now infer what you're asking, and we can convert that, or not we, but the autonomous database with AI can convert that into a SQL statement. And so this is what it would look like. We ask the database a question. What's the total streams for each Tom Hanks movie this month? It can take the information that you define in the profile, which I'll go into great detail throughout my demo. But you can take that information, infer from what you have in there, what you're asking, and it can come up with a SQL query, without you having to know how to join it, what tables to join, how to syntactically write that properly, and so forth, and group it by a specific column, which is the movies at this point. And so that's the power of using Select AI with an AI provider. Now, if you think about what happens behind the scenes, now here's an example, real quick example here. This is using the Select AI statement, and we're asking a simple statement, what are the top 10 streaming movies? that were released, you can see that, we're not typing a traditional select columns from a table. We're just saying select AI, giving it some human language, like a question, and it comes back with an answer that's tied to your data. That's the key to think of. And then you can also not only see the data that's being returned, but you can also see, well, what SQL query did it come up with at the end? And don't worry, we'll go into much more greater detail during the live demo, but I just wanted to show you this quick example of what a select AI statement looks like. Now, if you think about you may ask yourself, what's happening behind the scenes? We asked that too the first time Derek and I got into this and started looking under the covers. So essentially, you have an AI profile, and we'll go into detail in this, how to create it, the attributes that go into that. But you have an AI profile, and that profile is going to take an AI provider such as Cohere, OpenAI, Azure, OpenAI, and now OCI GenAI, and it's going to tie that large language models to metadata that's in your own database. So data that's specific to you in your business. You now take a profile, you join the AI side of it with the data side of it, and then you ask it a question or a prompt. So you take that prompt, you pass it over to the profile, and then what it does is it takes that prompt or that question along with the metadata of your data or tables that you have defined in your profile, and then the large language model infers what you're asking, and then comes up with a SQL statement that gets passed back to the autonomous database, and the database will run that SQL statement and give you a result. Now, what we're going to do now is, and this is another example or another way of saying what a profile is. So with a profile, and again, you'll see this in detail, you tell it what provider you want to go after or what provider you want to leverage. In this case, we have Cohere, OpenAI, and Azure OpenAI available today. And OCI GenAI is coming soon, if not now, but it is coming very soon to be able to run your select AI statements leveraging OCI GenAI. And then you take that and you associate those AI providers and large language models with data in your schemas and tables to come up with the results that you're looking for. And so at this point, I'm going to stop presenting, and I'm going to walk through what it takes to set up and use Select AI in your autonomous database. And again, as a reminder, all of this is available in the GitHub link that I showed you earlier. So for the most part, most everything that we do is going to be within a specific schema inside of your database. In our case, our schema is movie streams, but there is a couple configuration steps that you need to do first as the administrator of your database. And I'll explain that in a moment. So if you look at the left side, I'm connected as the administrator of the database. So in this case, the user admin in your autonomous database. And the first thing I need to do is I need to allow the schema or user movie stream to be able to reach out and access my cloud provider or AI provider. In this case, or example, it's API Cohere. So we're using Cohere as the AI provider for my examples. Derek actually leverages OpenAI. But at this point, we need to add to the entries to the access control network in order to allow it. So in this case, we're giving it the host of API Cohere AI, and in the documentation, it lists you the correct names for each host, and then the movie stream schema. So I'm allowing the movie stream data schema to be able to access the Cohere system. And you may ask yourself, well, what if do I have any existing network access set up already? You can look at that using this appropriate SQL statement as well. And as you can see, I have a couple set up already. Movie Stream is able to access not only Cohere, but also access OpenAI cloud AI provider. And then I have another schema demo which accesses Cohere. And so that's the first thing I need to do as administrator. The second thing I need to do is, since I'm a non-admin user, which is typically where you want to work, I need to be able to execute DBMS Cloud packages and DBMS Cloud AI packages as that user movie streams. So I'm going to grant movie stream access to these two packages, which then you'll see me using throughout the rest of the demo. So now that that's granted, I've now given movie stream access to reach out to Cohere and use their language models. And I've also granted movie stream access to execute the DBMS Cloud packages that I need to. So at this point, I'm done as an admin, and I'm no longer going to be running any of these commands as admin. So everything else at this point forward will be executed as the user movie stream. So as my user movie stream, I need to now create a credential. And this is the same credential you may have used if you're using DBMS Cloud copy data or DBMS Cloud get objects from object storage. This is another credential that we create. And what this credential does is, now that we have access to reach out to Cohere or OpenAI or Azure OpenAI, we need to be able to log in and actually access the large language models, LLMs. So we're going to define a credential. And that credential, when we create it, we give it a name. We also give it a provider username. So in my case, whatever you log into Cohere with, or OpenAI or Azure. And then for those who have used the models before, you go into these services and request or access your API key. And so those are the three values that you put in there. I'm not going to actually execute it here because I don't want to display my API key. But if once you create it, you can also look and see, well, what credentials do I have out there? You may want to see, do I already have a credential out there? If so, I may want to use it. So with this SQL statement, you can see your credentials that are out there. In this case, I've already created the webinar Cohere credential. This is my login for most of the AI providers, a Gmail account, and then you can see that it's enabled. So at this point, I have a credential now, which allows me to log into the AI provider. So the next thing I need to do is actually create the profile. And this is where, and I'm going to take a minute to explain this. This is where I explained earlier, we are able to marry Gen AI and the Gen AI services along with data specific to your business. So data that's in your schemas. And so when you create a profile, you do a DBMS Cloud AI create profile. And essentially, you only need to provide it a couple pieces of information, a profile name, what you want to call it. And then the rest of it is in the form of attributes. And these attributes are in the form of a JSON a string. You have to provide a provider. This is telling the profile what provider you're accessing, in this case, Cohere. And then you give it a credential. This is a credential I just created a moment ago. So I'm using Cohere, but then I also need to be able to log into Cohere, access the LLMs, and it passes back the SQL statements or information that I asked. And then in my example here, you can specify model, but you don't have to. There are defaults for all these profile attributes. In this case, I left model in. The default model for Cohere is command. And then the object list. Now, this is where you take your data in your movie stream schema or whatever schema you want to access, and you tell it, well, these are the owners of the tables, and these are the table names. So these are all the tables that I'm going to ask the Cohere AI service to infer against or translate. So the tables are movies, streams, and you can read them there. But I also want to take a moment before I start executing that just to show you, when you look at the documentation for profile attributes, there's a lot more than what I specified in my profile. You can specify the attribute comments, and Derek actually talks about that in his portion of the demo. You can also specify max tokens. Here's the model, and they supply typical or example models that are out there, what the defaults are. This is the object list. These are a list of tables that I want to translate. Some of these are related to if you're using OCI as your Gen AI service. Here's the provider, and again, OpenAI, Cohere, Azure, and OCI. Region is specific to OCI, but then also stop tokens and temperature. And these are all attributes that you can supply when you create your profile. And then here's an example of the profile. But at this point, I'm going to execute this and create my profile. And so now my profile is created. And then as you start to work with Select AI in Autonomous Database, you may end up with several profiles and you're not sure what you already have out there. And again, I like to provide the SQL that's associated with finding out, well, what do I have out there? And so here's a SQL statement that allows you to list all your profiles and their attributes. In my case, I'm just filtering on one, which is the one I just created. But as you can see, you can list all your profiles if you like. You can see, is it enabled or disabled? You can enable and disable these profiles. It lists the attributes and then the values that are in those attributes. And again, this should match exactly with what I just created. So at this point, I've created a profile that's referencing a Cohere. It's referencing the credential, which allows me to log into Cohere. It's referencing the model command, which is the model that I'm going to be accessing when I run my Select AI statements. And then lastly, it's saying these are the tables I want you to look at when I run these statements. And so now I'm ready to run some statements. So let me go over and grab my statements I'm going to walk through. And you may think, okay, I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm going to start and run my first AI statement. So let's go up here. I'm going to go Select AI chat. Say hello to me. I'm using the chat action here. And right away you get an error. You're saying, well, what did I do wrong? The from keyword is not there, And again, this is a little bit different way of thinking. I've written thousands of select star from table where whatever statements, and that's what I'm used to writing when you're thinking of writing select statements in an autonomous database. But with Select AI, you don't need a from statement. However, you do need to define your profile or your default profile that these Select AI statements will use. And I haven't done that yet. So I just wanted to show you what will happen if you don't set your profile. And so the first thing you want to do is for each session that you're in, you want to create or set your profile. And so we're going to specify the profile I just created. Okay, and now if I go back and run my Select AI chat prompt or question, it'll come back. You see it's thinking now. What it's done is it's gone out to Cohere with the prompt chat, and it's going to return a response. And in this case, it says hello to you as well. And you can look at the response here in detail. But again, it's gone out using my profile against Cohere, logged in with my credentials, passed it the chat question of say hello to me, and it came back with a response. Now, as you're working with these, you may want to ask yourself, well, you may be working in here for an hour or so and you forget what profile is active. And so you can use the DMIMS Cloud AI Get profile, and it'll return the profile that's active along with the owner of that profile. So if you run that, you can see that the active profile is called Webinar Cohere Prof or profile, and it's owned by the schema movie stream. So at this point, we have a profile. It's set. Any Select AI statements that I run from now on will leverage that profile. So now we're ready to actually run some statements. And so I'm going to run a couple chat ones. These are just generic ones that are going to go out and generate a response for me. At this point, we're not going against our data, but if I just want to ask it to give me a recipe for something, and if you've gone through any of the webinars or live labs, give me a recipe for French toast. You've probably heard of that one before. And so what it's doing now is, again, it's going back out to Cohere with the chat action. Is asking Cohere to give me a recipe for French toast. And if you look at the response, you can see that it's generated a recipe. Is it the best recipe? We don't know, but it's a recipe. And I can take that, follow it, and make French toast. Here's another example. Now that's more of a, related to a recipe. This is specific to a specific person. What is Tom Hanks best known for? We all know who Tom Hanks is. So this response should not be a surprise to anyone. So again, this point, we're going out asking Cohere, and if you're using OpenAI, it'll do the same. It'll come back and give you some details about Tom Hanks. Tell you that he's an actor, filmmaker, list some movies that he's part of, and so forth. So at this point, I haven't interacted with my data. I've run chat actions. At this point, I'm now going to start running or asking Select AI or running Select AI statements to look at my data, look at the metadata in the tables that I have defined in my profile, and return data that's in my data based on what you think. And so in this case, we switch our action from chat to run SQL. And run SQL is the default. And so you don't necessarily need to put run SQL in there. I'm just doing that to demonstrate that I've changed from a chat action to a run SQL action. And so we're going to run this. Now what it's doing is now that I told it to run SQL, what it's done is it's taken the prompt, what movies are Tom Hanks in? It's then taken the tables that are defined in my profile. It's passed all that to the AI provider. The AI providers run it through the LLMs and inferred what I'm asking, and then it generated a SQL statement, passed that SQL statement back to the autonomous database and executed it. And this is the actual data that's sitting in my movie streams schema in my database. Now you may ask yourself, well, what SQL did it generate? Well, there's a show SQL statement or action which allows you to see what it actually generated. And if you see here, what it's done is it's been able to infer from the tables and the columns that are in my profile that I'm asking for information from the movies table along with the actors table. Oh, and by the way, I need to join it. So it was able to figure out how to join it based on movie ID and filter that information for just the actor, Tom Hanks. And that was all done without me typing this actual select statement that you traditionally with a from and so forth. Here's another example of an AI question at Select AI that I'm asking it to bring back some data for me from my database. Again, it's taking what are our total streams for each Tom Hanks movie. It's passed that over along with the metadata, and it came back with an answer. And when you look at it, you think, okay, great. It looks great. But then you realize, is that right? Did Forrest Gump really not have any movie streams? Why are the movie streams have decimals in them, like partial movie streams? So then you say, well, give me the SQL statement that it thinks I'm asking for. And now when you look at it and you say, okay, well, yeah, that's a valid SQL statement. It brought back data, but it didn't quite get it right. It's summing the list price of the movies, but I didn't really ask for anything related to price. I asked for total stream count. So the point with me showing you this is just to show you that it doesn't get it right every time, and you really need to be careful and validate your data and make sure that what it returns is correct. now I'm going to ask the same question, but in a slightly different way. And so as you start to work with this, you realize that you can ask the same question many ways. And depending on how you ask it, what words you use, you could get a different result. So this time I'm going to ask it to count streams for each Tom Hanks movie. Essentially the same thing that I asked earlier. However, I use some slightly different words. And again, it's going to go out and for whatever reason, it didn't come back with a result this time. And this will happen. I actually was going to show you this as an example anyway. But sometimes it just can't answer the question for you. And so it'll tell you, I just can't answer it for you. If you run show SQL, it should, well, actually it came back. So this is the excitement of running a demo live. So if I go back and run this again as run SQL, it's not returning. But if it is smart enough to return the SQL if you do show SQL. And if we look at it, I think it actually got it right this time. It was able to infer from my question, we need to look at the movies table, the actors table, and the streams. We need to join all those and then filter on the actor Tom Hanks. And by the way, count the number of occurrences in the streams. So the SQL's actually right this time. And then here's a couple more generic statements just to show you, what's possible. And these are all specific to your data. So, if you don't have movie data, you may ask, for total number of customers that bought product XYZ. And you can see that, it summed up my stream counts by movies. And then this one is a basic one, but another example. How many customers are there? It brought back 148,129. And if you actually did the show SQL for that, it's literally doing a select count star from customer that you wouldn't typically run a SQL statement against. So that's I'm done showing you select AI with action type examples. One more thing I want to show you before I hand it off to Derek is we also have, or we supply what's called a DBMS Cloud AI generate procedure. And what that procedure allows you to do, or it supports show SQL action, it supports the chat, and it supports narrate. And what it allows you to do is package that up, receive the response, and then do something with it later. But the key takeaway with this example is it looks very similar to the select AI statement. I give it a prompt. I tell it what action I want it to do. Is it a chat, show SQL, or narrate? But then I give it a profile name. So in this case, you'll see it's not the same profile that I set for my session earlier. And that's correct. I can actually use a profile different than what I'm currently set in my session to run this select DBMS Cloud AI generate. So if I run this, very similar, it's going to go out with the chat action, but it's going to use a different profile this time, and it's going to return a response. In this case, I'm asking it to give me a cookie recipe. And again, if you look at the results, it actually came out with a recipe, with the ingredients, the steps, and so forth. So, to wrap up, what I've done is I created the network access to allow the movie streams to access cloud, Cohere, or OpenAI, or Azure, or whoever. I've set a credential which allows movie streams to log into it. I've created a profile that marries the AI provider with the data in your database, and I've run select AI statements to chat with the LLMs and also bring back data specific to my profile. in some basic examples. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Derek, and Derek's going to take what I've done and kind of dive into, well, what happens if I add comments or change table names or cache and so forth. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing, turn it over to Derek Cameron, and he'll go through his deep dive.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, everything I'm going to be doing is in SQL. If you like SQL, you'll like this part of this session. But the whole point, of course, Select AI is to have you not have to write SQL, right? Just like Steve talked about, I have to set a profile. A couple of things I want to highlight here. One is I know that the live labs had some very, very similar tables with almost identical columns, and I found I was getting inconsistent results. Customer table, customer contacts is just a subset of customers. Customer extension, most of the columns are the same as customer. I was getting inconsistency there. So my encouragement would be to try and create clean profiles. Don't send a bunch of garbage to the profile and expect it to find the right columns. The other thing is I started working with a consultant recently, and we had a handful of tables from eBusiness Suite. Well, for those of you who have worked on eBusiness Suite, those tables have hundreds and hundreds of columns. And he very quickly ran into maximum token issues. By default, the maximum number of tokens is 1024. You can bump that, but it's going to burn up a lot of your token credits. And so what are the tokens? Well, tokens are what's generated from your prompt. It takes your prompt and it breaks it down into tokens. I will not cover that, but I would highly encourage you to look at this article from OpenAI on how are tokens created. It takes words, chops them up, even the position of the word, even the capitalization of certain words can change the way the tokens are generated so I've got a bit of a cold here. And then those tokens are what drive the response. So do take a look at the article on tokens. Be mindful that you can't or shouldn't just say, here's my whole schema. You can specify a schema in your profile. And I've been looking at the blogs on OpenAI, not just with Oracle, but the whole issue of defining something, saying, hey, go look at my whole database. All of that is going to get passed on every prompt to the LLM. So think about that. Be very targeted with what you send and set in your profile. I got it, just like Steve said, got to set a profile. I'm going to use the OpenAI movie one. And, he's been going through some examples. These are very similar. I won't necessarily run them all, but show me movies streamed from customers in the United States. Movies is in the movies table. Streams are in the streams table. And the location of the customers is in the customer table. And so there's country. Okay, so that's where it's getting it. And cust ID is joined to streams. Streams is joined to customer by cust ID. And there's a movie join. You can see it right there. And so, yeah, very similar to what Steve showed you. There are a couple of other things I do want to show you. Explain SQL. Well, Explain SQL is going to generate the code for you, and then it gives a narrative of what the query is doing. I'm kind of a SQL Oracle lifer guy. I've been working with it for over 30 years. You don't need to tell me, explain what this query is doing. It's right there. But if you're not a SQL person, if you have business users and maybe they want to know a little more about the query, it does give you a narrative, an explanation using the Explain SQL. It gives you the query, and it gives you an explanation of the query. Now, let's get a little more under the covers here. Show prompt. Well, what does the LLM provider know? What exactly are we sending them? Well, I could go up to my profile here and say, well, it's gonna send the table movies, streams, pizza shop, actors. They're all in here. But more than that, it's going against, I'm suspect under the covers, the all tab calls metadata view, which is a view that's been around forever. And you can retrieve exactly what it comes back at. And again, I won't run this because it comes back as a big chunk of JSON. And so I ended up parsing it out. I'm like, I can't read this. Let me see what exactly it's showing. So it's movies, it's showing movie ID and that it's a number, summary, it's a varchar, runtime, it's a number. So it tells you the definitions. And these are helpful if you're going to add something up, right? If you're going to add something up, it has to be a number. So go through here, all those tables that were in the profile and the columns in those tables, they were derived under the covers. And this chunk of code was sent to the provider. So again, just to highlight that, all of this is going to get tokenized. All of this is going to get sent. Be mindful of what you send. It will chew up bandwidth. It will chew up your tokens. I have a paid account. It's pretty darn cheap. I've probably spent about 50 cents in the last couple of months, but it's fairly cheap. But if you start exploding the number of tables, it's going to chew up time. So what is the effect of cache? So if we do, let's execute this one. And so it's a very basic query. There it is there. It's accurate. It's pretty simple and pretty confident it's going to be right. Let me run it again and again and again. This is getting it cached for my profile. Now, I did find that, and I did have a conversation with product management about that. They feel that this should be sent to the LLM every single time. But the database says, you know, I already asked that question. I know what the answer is, and here it is. The implication of that is if I renamed my movies table, which is referenced here, let's do that. It's no longer exists. It's called movie temp. And so let me look at the SQL. Let's do that. Oh, well, it's referencing movies still. It's not blowing up. It still thinks it's movie. Well, at some point, there's going to be an error because now let's run that SQL. Well, at this point, it's going to look at it and it's trying to find the movies table, but the movies table doesn't exist anymore. And so there it is. It comes back and says, sorry, I can't find that table. But interestingly, it switches to chat mode and says, but let me see if I know something about that. Basically the model, the LLM model. So it's this actually on the fly went from a look in the database, run a query fails. Oh, let me go to the LLM and see if it knows something about that. So yeah, just be aware of that. The cache, this cache, it actually, it gets reset when you restart the database. So, or if you recreate your profile. So just so you know, I'm going to reset that back, movie temp back to movies. And now let's see the cache again. Now this is already seated, so it should, oh, I change it up here. So I'm gonna go back with this one query. Let's rename the column runtime to test. So understand that there's no real magic here. Runtime is the metric I'm interested in, but I'm going to call it test. I'm going to call it test. Good luck finding runtime when there's nothing in the metadata that says anything about runtime. So if I do a show SQL, again, just to reinforce the point that it still thinks that it's coming from movies and the runtime, that's the column there. That's a column, but it doesn't exist. I renamed it to test. So if I rerun this, it's going to blow up. I won't run that. So let's go back to here. And I've already run it to test. This was done in the previous step. But how can I overcome the fact that it can't find my column name? Or maybe you have an application, you say, look, I can't touch the metadata. The DBA tells me I can't run the metadata. You have two choices. Create a database view Or you can augment it with comments. You can say, hey, I can tell it in the comments, call them comments. If you're a guy like me, comments have been around for forever. I think back to version 8. And I started working, there it is there. I just added this now. And the column, this is a runtime. And I tell it this column contains runtime metrics. So I'm giving a little hint. I'm saying, hey, I'm going to create a new profile because I've got all this caching happening. I'm going to do that. Let me create a new profile. It's just called movie 2. And I'm going to set that profile now. Oops. I'm going to set the movie 2 profile. And let's do it now. And it's a select show sequel. Now it knows from the comments that the runtime metrics are in the test column. So it's given a better hint to the LLM model. It's told it, look, don't consider just the column names and the table names, consider the comments. So that's pretty helpful because comments are pretty benign. I mean, they don't affect applications, right? So these are all techniques to improve accuracy. Now, LLMs and these select AI, they do work against JSON data structures. They do, but not as well as if they're in columns and rows. So let me show you. Let's do a refresh on this. Let's go to movies and let's look at the data. Let's look at the data in here. Well, crew, this is like a nested table if you think about it. Crew has multiple. It has producers, it has directors, it has other people, directors, executive producers. It's got to crawl through this and it's got to associate the tags with the actual values. And so not only that, crew is nested JSON, studio is nested JSON, can have multiple studios. And there's another one in here that's nested. So I did a fairly comprehensive webinar on JSON, on transforming JSON. And so I can create, and I did create views on JSON. So if you look at crew here, this is now a view, and it's a flattened view on top of that nested JSON. So this is a technique to get around the challenges of trying to have the model interrogate nested JSON. If you go into the SQL here, again, I covered this in a fairly, like a full hour-long session going into JSON and the support for JSON in the database. You can see it here. This is using a JSON table function. The point I'm trying to make here is be kind to your LLMs. Make it easier for them. Have it set so that they can more easily find your data. Now, having done that, I have to create a profile on that because these are different tables, right? And I'm going to set that profile. I'll do that. And now, show movies from Marvel Studio. This will not work, at least in the test that I did on those nested JSON. Some of them do work. I don't want to say that none of them work. And if you go into the documentation, you'll see that JSON is supported, but it is a lot more of a challenge. And there it is there. And then who directed the most movies? This is going through now the JSON structures that have been flattened. A few things I want to point out. The tags are case sensitive. If I did lowercase Marvel Studios, I might not get a hit. So just be aware. And the studio name has to match exactly. These are things I discovered. They're not documented. The fact that the tags have to match exactly. I'm just pointing that out. These are kind of important things to know. Let's go back, reset this back to my original movies one. And how do I'm getting these responses back, but I'm going to be creating applications with those. I need to be able to do something with it. Let me just try and copy the result. Let's just insert into a club the result. Like it gave me the result on SQL Developer here. Let me do that. And anytime you combine a select I with any other SQL in a straight SQL statement, like a nested inline view, it will come back with this error. Like it suddenly says, hey, you got to select without a from clause. So how do you deal with that? Well, you can actually do a you can use Steve showed you this DBMS Cloud AI generate. This will work. So you can nest it inside PL SQL. So PL SQL gets around this. So let me do that. I'm going to insert this into the prompts table, and I can even capture the prompt itself. So if I do that, and again, you can see it's declare. I'm using DBMI generate. I'm going to execute that. And I'm going to go into the prompts table. Well, what does that look like? And there it is there. I ran it twice. It gives me the show SQL and it shows me the prompt. Now, I am going to go into an application because ultimately you're going to make an application out of this stuff, right? It's all well and good for us to test it, us SQL guys to test it and go, oh, isn't that cool? But you're going to make applications. And so you're going to find that we have an Apex app. It's all part of the live labs that Steve referenced. It actually runs the prompt, takes the prompt, sends it, takes the SQL back, and it writes the SQL into a table, and then it executes it. It's a two-step process if you want to do that. So if I go back here, I'm going to clear my prompt table just to reset it. And I am going to I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share my browser here, share, and it's movie streams. And we'll just show a couple things here. I would encourage you to take a look at this app builder, ChatDB. It's called ChatDB. And I'm going to run the application. And it wants to sign in again because I'm in run mode. And I am going to just paste one of the queries that I've been working with. Copy and ask a question. Ask the database and run. So this is doing exactly the same thing. I'm just letting you know it's a two-step process. So I'm gonna actually not show you the under the covers here. It's a two-step process. It's in the PL SQL in the application itself. I'm kind of running out of time, so I'll stop here. There is a explore and explain on here. This result is running. It's actually running the code in the CW3 prompts. It's running that and the conversations here. So it's storing it in there. So yeah. So with that, I don't think I need to go under the covers on Apex. I'm going to stop sharing, and we have a special guest on our show today, and that is Chip Baber. He's our manager, and Chip's here to talk about the Code Innovate program. Over to you, Chip.
Well, thanks, Derek. First of all, great information today. I'm sure if you're watching it, fun to take in. It was a lot for me to take in. So what do you do next? How do you engage and help your company take the power of autonomous, power of select AI, and build something of value? But at Oracle, we have a program we call Code Innovate. I kind of equate it to something I do with my kids. So I had a chance to take my kids a while back to Legoland. Highly recommend if you've never been. And at Legoland, we attended the Master Builder class. And the way that the class works is the kids are given disassembled pieces, but no instructions, no written instructions. Instead, gentlemen and ladies in the green shirts who are true master builders kind of sit down with them at the table, ask them what they want to build, what they want to try, what they want to learn. On this particular day, we built these little penguins over the course of about an hour. The reason I tell that story is in its simplest form, that's what we do with Code Innovate and what we'd like to do with you. We have master builders here like Derek and Steve and others. I'm sure you have ideas about how Select AI, how autonomous can help your business, help you be more efficient. And Code Innovate is a way that we can come together to make that happen. Code Innovate is a one-to-one customer event. It's a 5-day event, 4 hours a day for 5 consecutive days. Well, we will partner with you. We'll learn a little bit about your use case that you'd like to accomplish with the technology and our PaaS and IaaS stack. We'll align the right resources, and then we'll actually co-develop with you over this time. We don't actually charge for this, but our goal is to share as much knowledge as possible, like in the Lego example, about how to put parts and pieces together to help you. And as we go through our Code Innovate, you'll get to provide us your use case. So it's not a lab. It's not, follow step A, B, and C. It's a real co-development effort. You'll learn about our products and you'll learn about our solutions, but you'll learn in terms of solving a business challenge that you can keep and use moving forward. And the event will actually conclude with what we call a first pass prototype. So we'll get as far as we can get in 20 hours with you. And the cool thing is, it's not you watching Oracle build. Anyone who attends a Code Innovate is actually expected to be hands-on keyboard, and our team will kind of guide you over the shoulders on how to do it, where to go. Now, to do a Code Innovate, we do have a few minimums. Like I said, we don't charge for this program, but we do look for organizations to provide us the following. We need at least 4 developers committed from your team. We need those individuals to be fully committed for 20 hours. That's 4 hours a day for 5 consecutive days in a single week. We do execute this via Zoom, so they can be in different locations. We would ask before the event, and we'd work with you to understand the use case around AI or select AI you'd like to accomplish. And when all those elements are in place, typically it takes us about 3 weeks once we know those items to make sure we have the right, master builders lined up to support you. So if you are interested in Code Innovate and learning more or engaging us, there are kind of 2 ways that you can do it. Number one, you could enter your email into our Zoom chat. We'll reach back out to you in the next couple of days. Or you can capture, we do have an open mail, codeinnovate_US_GRP at oracle.com that you can reach out to us with your idea and your company, and we'll be glad to follow up with you.
Thank you again so much, and we hope to see you at the next one.